Yeah, it's definitely going to be something he has to think about because he is up against that Pokemon, of course, that Lapras that was able to go all the way and win him the Champions Cup, which was just proven to show how really good and rigid this Pokemon is. Of course, Rillaboom has come into the fray, so it is a tough matchup for it, but at this point, there is no Rillaboom. There is a Venusaur and a Grimmsnarl lead on Fevzi's side, whilst a Double Fairy lead on Alex's side with the Whimsicott and Togekiss.
Yeah, so the Fairy is going to be threatened down by that Poison-type Venusaur, but of course, Togekiss does have access to those flying moves that can also hit it super effectively. So it's going to be an interesting interaction to see if we're going to see any of the sleep powders come out from the Venusaur that it's very well known for, whether it can outspeed and put that Togekiss to sleep, or whether it just wants to go on the offensive with its super effective poison moves. We've got both of the supportive berries here with the Whimsicott on Alexander's side and the Grimmsnarl on Fevzi's side. Potentially having access to Fake Out to put a stop to the Whimsicott from being able to make use of any of its supportive moves this turn, but we're not going to see a supportive thing here. We're going to see that offensive Dynamax come out.
We are going to see the offensive Dynamax coming out. I'll be really surprised if it's Grimmsnarl. No, it's Venusaur. It is that Gigantamax Venusaur form coming out just to play a bit, maybe get a Max Ooze off as well to boost his special attack, but let's try to find out. It'll be curious to see if the Grimmsnarl does go for Fake Out, and it does go for the Fake Out into the Whimsicott. This might be a double up right now that we might be seeing. Max Ooze does come out. It does outspeed the Togekiss. Is it enough to pick up the KO? It more than is, of course. So really good double up from Fevzi's side, being able to boost the Venusaur by one special attack stat stage, whilst also nullifying any potential tailwinds coming out from Alex's side. Whilst an Air Slash does come out, deals good damage, but it wasn't actually a crit onto the Venusaur. So Tailwind is no longer an option, as well as beat up on Alex's side.
Yeah, no Airstream coming out from the Togekiss either, so this Venusaur is still most likely going to be outspeeding this Togekiss here, but Terrakion coming in here, going to be thrusting down that Venusaur, and yeah, it was a very good turn one from Fevzi, putting a stop to any shenanigans that the Whimsicott could have gone for, whether it went for that Tailwind to boost the speed of the Togekiss, or being able to beat up this Terrakion that has now come in instead. And we'll have to see what other support this Grimmsnarl has up its sleeve, whether it is going to be carrying those screens in the Light Screen and the Reflect to make the Venusaur even more bulky, whether it has access to something like Thunder Wave so that the Venusaur would be able to move before the Terrakion, and with that +1 special attack boost that it's got from the Max Ooze, if it went for that Vine Lash into the Terrakion, it would do a huge amount of damage. Togekiss does still threaten the redirection away from that Terrakion if it wants to keep it safe. If it is still fearing that Thunder Wave coming out, Follow Me would be able to redirect that and keep that Terrakion fast and keep this Terrakion in its Dynamax form. Oh, no, it's going to be that Togekiss instead, so he is going to be going for the Airstream.
Yeah, so we are going to be potentially seeing that Max Airstream coming out from Togekiss on Alex's side. Terrakion not opting for the Dynamax, just wants to go for the raw damage on its end, whilst we do see Grimmsnarl does get a Reflect up and going for Fevzi's side and his Pokemon. Rock Slide does come out from the Terrakion, doesn't deal as much damage as it originally would have prior to the Reflect, and G-Max Vine Lash does come out from the Venusaur and picks up a one-hit KO onto the Terrakion, completely ignoring the Togekiss at the current moment while setting up that residual damage over time. Max Airstream from this HP range will be more than enough to pick up the KO from the Togekiss onto the G-Max Venusaur, but it does get a critical hit. But at that point, I don't think it would have mattered, judging by the Air Slash damage output in the previous turn. But did the Venusaur basically accomplish what it tried to set out for, Jamie?
Yeah, it's been able to knock out two Pokemon here and set up that Vine Lash onto Alexander's side of the field. And yeah, obviously Fevzi was expecting the Terrakion to go for the Dynamax instead, setting up the Reflect instead of the Light Screen. But the Light Screen wouldn't have helped out the Venusaur here, as we did see the Airstream did get that critical hit and would have ignored that Light Screen. And now Torkoal and Toxtricity are going to be joining the field. Toxtricity for Alexander's side is going to be thrusting down that Grimmsnarl with super effective damage with that Sludge Bomb, or if it wants to just go for those big overdrives that would hit both the Grimmsnarl and the Torkoal as well. We didn't see a Thunder Wave come out from the Grimmsnarl. It did have the Reflect, most likely going to be carrying the Light Screen as well. And then you'd have to wonder what the final move would be on that Grimmsnarl. I mean, if it was something like the Thunder Wave, the Torkoal being such a slow Pokemon, wouldn't be able to outspeed anything if even if the Grimmsnarl was able to Thunder Wave that Togekiss, and of course it can't Thunder Wave the electric type Toxtricity.
And we are going to see the second screen coming up in the form of a light screen from that Grimmsnarl, protecting it a bit more better against special moves, which we will see straight after. The Max Airstream doesn't allow the Torkoal to survive. I don't think so. It could have been a crit, and it is a crit as well. I'm not sure if that mattered because, of course, Torkoal isn't known for its special defense stats to be quite high. They're quite low. This Toxtricity does move next. It could have gone for a Sludge Bomb, which would have been a super effective move, but it still dealt good damage given the fact that it is now a single target damage output, only 100% compared to a double.
Yeah, and very nice critical hits, showing why the critical hit items, the Scope Lens and the Razor Claws are used on that Togekiss, being able to ignore the light screen completely and knock out the Torkoal in one shot. Do have this Tyranitar switching in now though, and it is going to be threatening down that Togekiss for super effective damage. Grimmsnarl has used it for its first 3 moves in that Fake Out, Light Screen, and Reflect, and all 3 of those moves would be useless now, as it's no longer able to use that Fake Out, and it does have the screens on the field, so we're most likely going to be seeing that final move come out from the Grimmsnarl, whether that's a final supporting move or if it is an offensive move.
Oh, and we are going to see the Tyranitar actually go for Protect, knowing that it is good against these opposing Pokemon. Max Flare does come out from the Togekiss, completely ignores the Tyranitar, because it could have gone for a Max Starfall easily, maybe hoping to get a critical hit, a KO if it could, dependent on how it's trained. But no, it opted for setting the Sun up now, whilst picking up a KO onto the Grimmsnarl, allowing both the Togekiss and the Toxtricity to hit harder against this Tyranitar, which now doesn't get the special defensive boost it would normally with Sandstorm.
Yeah, a very, very smart choice of Max Flare there. Instead of going for those Airstreams and that Starfall, the Max Flare was enough to take out the Grimmsnarl. And we did see that it wasn't moving with any priority, so it will be having an offensive move there. So no Thunder Wave potential coming out from that Grimmsnarl. And yeah, now the Togekiss and the Toxtricity are staring down the Tyranitar that is out of the Sandstorm. Did lose the Dynamax on the Togekiss, so it will just be going for a Dazzling Gleam instead, which will be doing a lot less damage than the Starfall would have done, but still should be doing a huge amount of damage to that Tyranitar, especially with another critical hit.
Oh wow, what were you saying about not as much damage? We saw it get actually brought down to its to about 1 HP, because we did see the Witness Policy proc there too. So a crucial survival if it were in a good position, but unfortunately the way that Alex was able to set himself up board position wise was really, really pivotal, and it just goes to show you how well thought out Alex's plan was mid-game.
Yeah, and just showing how useful those critical hits can be when the opponent's strategy is setting up those Light Screen and Reflects to be able to make yourself a lot more bulky. That doesn't matter if you're getting the critical hits, and just saw how much damage that Togekiss was able to do. It did gut those 3 critical hits against the Venusaur, which most likely wouldn't have mattered at that point, but then the Torkoal and the Tyranitar, we saw take so much damage. The Torkoal being able to be taken out in one shot, the Tyranitar being very close to being taken out with that single target Dazzling Gleam. Not even the Starfall bringing it down to what looked like 1 or 2 HP. Alexander coming out with that Togekiss, a really good strategy. Just ignore the screens on those Grimmsnarl completely.
Yeah, it just goes to show that Togekiss is not down and out, ladies and gents. It is still living strong and quite alive right now, because it does benefit hugely from the fact that it gets the double HP, boost of the Dynamax. It goes ahead and unleashes Max Airstreams, Max Starfalls, and in this case, as we saw, Max Flares to reverse weather at its own disposition if it so wants to. So being able to go ahead and give it a Scope Lens and the ability of Super Luck means that it has a half of the time it gets a crit off, the other half it doesn't. So it's kind of a dare situation. 50-50 coin flip. Do I get that extra damage and ignore screens, or do I not?
Yeah, and you'll be doing so much more damage through the screens because it ignores the screens completely. If you don't get that critical hit, you will factor in the screen and be doing significantly less damage. So getting quite fortunate with the critical hits in this first game. We'll have to see if that's going to be the same strategy that Alexander wants to go for. He did bring the Whimsicott and the Terrakion, but between them, it was able to just get off a Rock Slide against a Reflect with the Terrakion and not doing too much damage. But then that threat of the Whimsicott and Terrakion combination just let Togekiss just run through Fevzi's team.
I think that's a good note to make as well, because of the fact that there is always that threat, but it doesn't mean that you always need to use it, because your opponent will be scared of it. And we're actually going to see a switch up from Fevzi's side. The Grimmsnarl is here once again, but now the Gyarados comes out to play, whilst on Alexandre's side, we do see Togekiss and the Lapras coming out. So the Lapras trying to potentially be cheeky against the German logo.
Yeah, it's an interesting switch up, bringing the Lapras here, threatening his own potential screens with the Aurora Veil instead of the Light Screen and the Reflect coming up from the Grimmsnarl instead. And yeah, the Whimsicott, it just got faked out and is taken out immediately by the Venusaur as well. But also a switch up from Fevzi. He is going with this Gyarados that is going to be Dynamaxing instead of the Venusaur here. So most likely going to be wanting to go for those air screens and boost up his speed.
And we are going to see that shiny Gyarados coming out in its Dynamax form, maybe wanting to go ahead and try to get some max airstreams or even a max overgrowth onto the Lapras if it does expect, or it all depends on, it's a 50-50. Will the Togekiss go for a Follow Me or will it Dynamax? But we do, in fact, see the Dynamax when it's right next to the Lapras as well, which you don't commonly see. You would expect a Follow Me and a Gigantamax Lapras, but not today. We do see Light Screen coming out. Will this Lapras be hopefully trying to go for a Freeze Dry, which is ×4 super effective against this Gyarados? And will it be able to get it off? Max Airstream does come out from the Gyarados into the Togekiss slot. Does deal good relative chip damage whilst boosting its speed and having that Light Screen support right next to it, which is really handy against these max Airstreams from the Togekiss. It doesn't, unfortunately, for Alexandre's side, pick up a crit and just ignore them and completely bypass them. But it does get, it does neutralize the speed tiering, at least for now. Freeze Dry does come out, but doesn't deal as much damage because of that crucial Light Screen.
You can see how useful the Light Screen can be if it is not ignored by those critical hits. The Airstream on the Togekiss not picking up that critical hit this time and really doing not much damage at all to that Gyarados. Able to shrug off 4-time super effective move coming out from the Lapras as well, and able to fire off another Airstream into this Togekiss.
Yeah, so the Togekiss does once again get dealt some good chip damage, whilst the Gyarados does get another max Airstream off. Does boost the Grimmsnarl as well, at least for now, and that could be pivotal. The Spirit Break does come out, does reduce the Lapras' special attack by 1 stage from the Grimmsnarl. Max Airstream now coming out in turn from the Togekiss. It looks like that could have been a critical hit. Perhaps, yeah, it was, because it did ignore the Light Screen damage this time round, dealing good chip damage onto the Gyarados, whilst neutralizing once again the speed stat. Boarding Freeze Dry is not enough to pick up the KO this time round, proving the Light Screen dividends of that turn 1 play.
Yeah, and the Spirit Break as well from the Grimmsnarl, reducing the special attack even further. It's just showing how useful damage reduction can be if you can actually get it into a position where it's not ignored, with the Togekiss now getting the critical hit, showing the difference in damage that the ignoring the Light Screen can do if you get that critical hit, and if you don't either. It was such a huge increase of damage onto that Gyarados, but the Light Screen really paying off. The Gyarados is able to survive the 2 attacks from both the Lapras and the Togekiss, and that Spirit Break was also very, very clutch in letting that Gyarados be able to survive and fire off 1 more max move into Alexander's side.
Yeah, 100%. And we are going to see a max Airstream once again for the 3rd time in a row come out from the Gyarados, dealing good damage onto the Lapras whilst boosting itself. This could be an Assault Vest variant as well because of the damage that the Togekiss was able to get. Normally you'd expect a bit more through a critical hit. And talking about Togekiss, it is enough now to pick up the KO onto that low HP Gyarados whilst boosting itself and the Lapras now to +3 speed stages, and being able to pick up a KO, get rid of Fevzi's Dynamax right now. So it's going to be really interesting what other Pokemon are going to come out to play. But before that, we do see the Freeze Dry coming out onto the Grimmsnarl, chilling a minor bit of chip damage, whilst the Spirit Break now comes second after the Lapras, more interestingly enough, whilst being able to pick up that KO.
Yeah, so we're going to be losing the Dynamax on the Togekiss here as well, and both Pokemon did very well. The Gyarados being able to shrug off all those moves and fire off 3 max moves, and now the Togekiss is going to be losing its Dynamax as well. Tracheon here coming in is going to be threatening down that Torkoal with its super effective Rock Slides, but because the Dynamax was used on the Togekiss, it won't be able to Dynamax itself and go for a Rockfall to overwrite the Sun with the Sandstorm instead. So this Torkoal is going to be in its preferred weather here. And the Grimmsnarl hasn't yet set up a Reflect. It can easily set that Reflect up and help that Torkoal survive even more from the Rock Slide. And then the Torkoal, if it's still hit with a critical hit, will still take a lot of damage. So it's going to come down a lot to whether that Togekiss is going to be able to get a critical hit through that Light Screen.
And you called it right, Jamie. The Reflect does come out from the Grimmsnarl, whilst Air Slash does miss onto the Torkoal from the Togekiss. Rock Slide doesn't, though, so it could potentially get a flinch off on the Torkoal and does get Life Orb Recoil, but no flinches here, ladies and gents. Yawn does come out from the Torkoal into the Togekiss slot, hoping to try to slow down that Togekiss' momentum.
Yeah, very fortunate for the Torkoal being able to get off and attack that turn. The Air Slash dodge was also very fortunate and would have given another flinch chance on top of that Rock Slide onto the Torkoal, but able to dodge that attack and get off that Yawn into the Togekiss. And now Alexander has to choose whether he wants to go for one more critical hit chance into that Torkoal, or if he wants to switch out the Togekiss to stop it from being put to sleep. And yeah, now the Torkoal is in a really good position, as this Togekiss did decide to switch out.
It did decide to switch out for the Toxtricity on Alexandre's side, whilst the Grimmsnarl also switches out on Fevzi's side for the Venusaur. It is in the weather. It really wants to be. Oh, and that might have been really big play there, as the Terrakion does go for a Protect, and the Torkoal tries to go for a Protect, but does fail because it was the last Pokemon to try to go for it.
Yeah, that's a really good switch in for the Venusaur now. It is in the sun, and it will be outspeeding this Terrakion and threatening it with a huge grass move, and would easily pick up the knockout as well. And the Togekiss would be the only switch in that the Terrakion could do, because it has just protected, so it would either have to take that grass move or switch into a very weakened Togekiss, but instead, we're going to be seeing that Earth Power into Toxtricity instead.
Ooh, Earth Power does come out and picks up that KO, the one-hit KO onto the 4-time super effective Toxtricity. Does reveal a Life Orb on the Venusaur, whilst Rock Slide does come out from the Terrakion. Can it pick up a flinch at this point on the Torkoal is the question, and it doesn't, whilst Body Press does come out as retaliation. Not quite enough to pick up the KO, but my word, what kind of damage was that, leaving Alexandre down to his last 2 Pokemon.
Yeah, the Togekiss and the Terrakion here being very weakened. The Venusaur pretty much just gets to pick its choice of target to be able to pick up a knockout on that Togekiss or the Terrakion, and then the Torkoal would be able to follow it with an attack. And we've seen the damage the Torkoal and the Venusaur were taking through those screens from that Rock Slide. It's a really good position for Venusaur being able to outspeed and threaten down this Terrakion and the Togekiss.
Yeah, and we are going to see the Torkoal switch up now for the Grimmsnarl. Whilst a Sludge Bomb does come out from the Venusaur, wants to be safe and make sure it can pick up the KO onto the Togekiss. But the Terrakion at this point, maybe if it could get a critical hit through any Reflects on the Venusaur, could prove trouble for Fevzi's side, but it doesn't. And of course, it does just go down to the Life Orb Recoil. So regardless, it was always going down after the turn, whether there was a crit or not.
Yeah, it's a very safe target onto the Togekiss there, as even if the Togekiss was carrying Protect and protects itself from the Sludge Bomb, the Terrakion would have still taken itself out with the Life Orb Recoil and didn't pick up the knockout on the Venusaur or the Grimmsnarl, so another attack would have just been able to be launched into that Togekiss. So quite a nice adjustment coming out from Fevzi's side. Gyarados being able to shrug off all those max moves and then being able to clean up with his Venusaur in the end game. So yeah, it was adaptations from both players here, and you could just really see the significance of getting the critical hits with those with the damage reduction from the light screen as well. Doing just pitiful damage to that Gyarados the first time, but then doing significant damage in the next one. So the damage reduction is key here if it can be either ignored or implemented correctly.
Yeah, I think it's also the fact that, you know, we've got a Toga crit right now, or a Kiss crit, whichever one you want to call it. And having the 50-50 chance of picking up a critical hit or not proved to be quite crucial, because as we've seen, Alexandre is really thinking that his strategy is probably going to be trying to Dynamax that Togekiss. And because it did so much work for him in that game 1, he's noted that he wants to try to like shrug it out with regards to damage. And if he gets those 50-50 chances, he could have, for example, if he got one more against that Gyarados in the first 3 turns of game 2, he would have already been able to pick up a KO onto it, even if the Spirit Break did come out from the Grimmsnarl onto the Lapras. But he wasn't, let's say, that fortunate. So it'll be really interesting to see if he wants to try to utilize maybe getting that Terrakion and beat up combo going. It could be beneficial to him. I think Tailwind could also be beneficial. Maybe bring that Whimsicott, but I'm not sure. What do you think he's going to try to opt for?
Well, the Whimsicott just gets shut down immediately by the fake out from the Grimmsnarl, and if the Whimsicott's not carrying Protect, then it won't be able to protect from that, and a double up would put a stop to any Tailwinds that the Whimsicott wants to go for. Maybe the Whimsicott needs to be left in the back to avoid the first turn fake out that the Grimmsnarl is threatening. It was very interesting to see Alexander go with that Lapras in game 2, but then opt to Dynamax a different Pokemon. Lapras is very commonly Dynamax when it's brought and doesn't offer too much offensive pressure when it's not Dynamaxed, and doesn't get your screens up as well. And we were seeing how significant the screens were for Fevzi's side. Maybe Alexander wants to get up his own screens with that Aurora Veil.
Yeah, so we are going to be seeing that same game 2 lead coming up from Fevzi's side with the Grimmsnarl and Gyarados. Arcanine this time round from Alexandre's side, being able to get an Intimidate drop onto that Gyarados and also the Grimmsnarl, because we have seen it rock that physical move, Spirit Break. So what do you think about this matchup so far with the Arcanine being brought in?
It's interesting bringing the Arcanine in the face of a Gyarados. It does get the Intimidate onto it, but it is going to be threatened very heavily by the Water moves coming out from the Gyarados. So very interesting switch up with going with the Arcanine. Does have the potential to burn the Gyarados with the Will-O-Wisp as well, further reducing the damage output. But then if Fevzi's expecting that, he can just fake out the Arcanine, stop that damage reduction, and just fire off another big max move with the Gyarados as well. Maybe he wants to switch out the Gyarados because of that Intimidate and the burn potential coming out from the Will-O-Wisp as well. We'll have to see if the Togekiss once again goes on the offensive immediately with the Dynamax, but Arcanine is not going to be Will-O-Wisping this turn. It's just wanted to get the Intimidate on the Gyarados and then switch out for this Toxtricity.
Yeah, it might be wanting to try to recycle that, cycle in the Intimidate over time. Whilst we do see the Toxtricity coming out, and we are going to be seeing the Dynamax coming out from that Gyarados, so it's not caring as much about that Intimidate drop on itself. Maybe hoping that it can try to just deal that important damage, or even try to rival any potential max airstreams coming out from the Togekiss, which we will see at least Dynamax for this turn. So Fevzi is looking to try to maybe shrug it out with regards to game 2, just like he did there. He was able to get some damage over time off onto his opponent's Pokemon and whittle their HP down. So I'm expecting another... Oh no, there is no screen being brought up right now. Just a raw fake out from the Grimmsnarl into the what was Arcanine slot, and a max airstream double up. So that was a fake out and max airstream double up, hoping to deal good damage onto the Arcanine. Maybe not put it within Citrus Berry or Super Berry range, but we will see. It's still able to get a +1 speed going for it, whilst max airstream does come out from the Togekiss. Does get a crit, of course, onto the Gyarados. I say, of course, because it has that 50-50 chance, and it was able to get it whilst increasing the speed. So, Toxtricity, if it might somehow be faster than Gyarados, do you think it's in a really good spot?
It depends on the coverage that the Gyarados have, whether it has a ground move as well. Because it's been able to shrug off those moves very easily from the Togekiss and the Lapras before, so... maybe having an item like the Assault Vest to be able to shrug off those moves, and that would allow it to have extra coverage. And yeah, the Arcanine did just want to be cycling those Intimidates.
Oh wow, yeah, we did see the Arcanine come in, cycle the Intimidates, whilst a Light Screen does come out from the Grimmsnarl. Max Quake, wow, and we actually see the reveal of Shuka Berry on that Arcanine, so this will not be picking up the KO unless it's a critical hit somehow. It definitely won't. Because of that very important double Intimidate, of course, over the duration of the first 2 turns, and the Shuka Berry halving all ground type moves. So very, very clutch item choice to have right there. Whilst Max Airstream does very, very little damage, it goes to show you how strong and bulky that Gyarados can be, hiding behind a Light Screen.
Yeah, very important switch in with the Arcanine getting another Intimidate on that Gyarados and avoiding that Max Quake coming out from the Gyarados, which would have easily picked up the knockout on that Toxtricity. So Toxtricity is a very good Pokemon to deal with the Gyarados if you can get that overdrive off, but Gyarados most likely going to be outspeeding the Toxtricity. Alexander, realizing that, just wanted to get another Intimidate onto this Gyarados, really put a stop to this Gyarados from being able to do anything, making use of its Dynamax. And again, the Light Screen coming out, really reducing the damage from this Gyarados. And we've got one more turn of Dynamax going to be coming out from both Pokemon here. And so, yeah, with this Gyarados being 2 stages of reduced attack, it's really not going to be doing too much damage at all. And it will also, the Togekiss as well, we'll have to see if it's going to get one of those critical hits through the Light Screen, if it can do a lot of damage as well.
Ooh, and we do see Max Airstream coming up from that Togekiss. Isn't quite enough to pick up the KO onto the Grimmsnarl, even though it did get the critical hit. And we did see it move first because of the fact that it got that second Max Airstream previously when the Gyarados opted for the Max Quake. It does allow the Arcanine to now outspeed the Gyarados and successfully land a Will-O-Wisp, further reducing the damage output of that Gyarados. And the Gyarados went for the Max Airstream in hopes to rival the speed, but it's just not dealing the kind of damage it really wants to. The Grimmsnarl does go for a Spirit Break, hoping to try to catch the Togekiss out when it doesn't land a critical hit. And this is looking really good for Alexandre at the current moment.
Gyarados is really not going to be doing any damage now with those 2 Intimidates and the Burn as well. It's really not going to be threatening any damage. Yeah. The Togekiss is still going to be getting potential critical hits with the non-max moves anyway. It would still be able to go for something like a Dazzling Gleam now, which would be able to knock out that Grimmsnarl, which is at such low HP, and the Gyarados is really not threatening anything here. Maybe he wants to switch out so it can do some damage. Even when it's burned, it would get rid of the Intimidate drops. So we did see it was Moxie, so it won't be able to intimidate any of Alexander's Pokemon, but it is going to be staying in here and probably doing very little damage.
Oh, wow. And the Arcanine does actually go for a safe protect, whilst Dazzling Gleam does come out, of course, does outspeed both the Grimmsnarl and the Gyarados, picks up a double crit going loose right now, and being able to pick up a KO on the Grimmsnarl. Waterfall does come out from the Gyarados and is unable to damage that Arcanine. So right now, Gyarados is being a very, very useless slot at the current moment for Fevzi. He will be wanting it to go down as soon as possible, but I don't think Alexandre wants him to do that.
Yeah, and this Torkoal isn't going to be threatening too much against the Arcanine, and it will be able to get some big fire moves off into the Togekiss as well, but really, Fevzi wants to get that probable Venusaur in the back into a good position. If he switches it in now, though, it does have the potential to take a fire move from the Arcanine or a flying move from the Togekiss as well. But at the same time, this Gyarados is just really not threatening any damage on the field. So Alexander could just choose to completely ignore it and just go for that Torkoal. But then if Fevzi can read into that and switch in the Venusaur instead, it would be a very useful switch. But instead, we're just going to leave the Gyarados on the field this time.
Yeah, it's just going to leave the Gyarados on the field whilst getting a Snarl off, reducing that Torkoal special attack by 1 stat stage. Whilst Togekiss does come out now, gets a critical hit, Air Slash into the Torkoal. Whilst the Gyarados actually goes for Iron Head. Very interesting selection of moves there, dealing no damage whatsoever. Whilst the Torkoal actually does get flinched from that crit kiss, ladies and gents.
Yeah, and that would have been a potential switch in for the Venusaur on the Gyarados' side, but it would have taken a Snarl as it switched in. So really nice covering of the options there from Alexander with that Snarl, reducing the special attack from the Torkoal as well, and doing a lot of damage with that Air Slash with the critical hit. And getting the flinch as well is very useful. The Torkoal couldn't fire off any of its moves. It couldn't go for a Yawn to try and put a stop to Alexander's Pokemon. And yeah, now the Gyarados most likely going to be in range of a Dazzling Gleam and a Snarl with that Torkoal as well. And it's looking very good for Alexander here.
Yeah, and the Arcanine is going to go for the Heat Wave. It won't be picking up a KO, but it will be dealing good chip damage. Whilst that might actually be a Super Berry coming out from the Torkoal. Yeah, it's an Aya Papa Berry. Air Slash coming out from the Togekiss. Will it be able to pick up a crit here? It doesn't. Onto the Torkoal. Earthquake actually comes out from the Gyarados. Be very interested to see what kind of damage the Torkoal takes, which is none, as well as the Arcanine. Unfortunate for Fevzi's side. Whilst a Yawn does come out this time from the Torkoal into the Togekiss. So this might have been the original plan that Fevzi wanted to go for, but he did get flinched in the previous turn.
Yeah, now that Gyarados will be in range of one more burn, so it will go down at the end of this turn. So Torkoal has a very free protect if it wants to, whether the Togekiss stays in and falls asleep to that Yawn, or if it switches out as well. So yeah, Fevzi just looking to get in his final Pokemon, sacrifice that Gyarados, and get that last Pokemon in for free.
Yeah, and Arcanine is just going to go for the Protect right now, as well as the Torkoal. Just wanting to cement his position and try to allow the Togekiss to not get any damage off, as we did see the Air Slash did try to double up into it, and we are going to see another Earthquake coming out, not affecting and not damaging anything. The poor Gyarados just being very hopeless in that situation, not even being able to get any sort of damage out the last turn of that it was on the field, and the Togekiss does now incur the sleep status.
So won't be able to threaten any redirection or damage onto this Torkoal and this Venusaur that is switching in as well. So the Venusaur, if it wants to, has a free Earth Power into the Arcanine, as the Togekiss can't redirect this turn. So it's not actually looking too bad for Fevzi. This Venusaur is in the sun. Not for too many more turns, as we saw there. It was only going to be 2 more turns, but it's still going to be outspeeding the Arcanine and the Togekiss this turn. And no redirection means that the Earth Power can be fired off into the Arcanine slot. And also a Yawn potentially could come out from the Torkoal, pinning the Pokemon that could switch in for the Togekiss if it wants to switch out, so that another Pokemon can start threatening the Venusaur or the Torkoal. Or it can just go for an offensive move, as this Togekiss is going to be remaining in.
And it is going to be outspeeding the Arcanine at least, and does pick up the KO onto the Torkoal, whilst dealing half the HP's worth of damage onto the Venusaur. And of course, it's all because of these speed boosts from those max airstreams that the Venusaur is not able to outspeed them, even in Sun. Earth Power, though, on the other hand, is going to be more than enough to pick up the KO onto this Arcanine. So Fevzi is really hoping for this Togekiss to just stay asleep, even though if there is a Terrakion in the back, for example, it will be outspeeding the Venusaur outside of Sun once it does expire.
Yeah, so it's showing how significant those stat boosts from the max moves can be. Even all these turns later, the Arcanine's getting those 2 airstream boosts from many turns ago was able to outspeed this Venusaur in the Sun, KO the Torkoal with that Heat Wave, and put the Venusaur dangerously low. The Togekiss is still asleep, so maybe if an Earth Power can go off into Toxtricity and the Togekiss remains asleep for 2 more turns, it could be a potential comeback for Fevzi. We're going to have to see what's going to be happening with this sleepy Togekiss.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's, okay, there we go. So it's going to be a turn now of sleep. Earth Power does come out from the Venusaur. Will be enough to pick up the KO, of course, onto the ×4 weak Toxtricity. I think right now, it's just at such a low HP range, isn't it, the Venusaur? So if, for example, Togekiss could somehow sleep again, the Terrakion, if there is one in fact, as we have seen, of course, and we will be seeing coming out right now, will be free to get any sort of chip damage. So unless it decides to go for Rock Slide and maybe miss them all, but Venusaur's just at such a low HP range, isn't it?
Yeah, it could potentially be in range of a close combat from the Terrakion. It would be resisted, but
yeah,
it is still very low. And also, you'd have to factor in the Life Orb recoil that the Venusaur would have to take to KO one of the Pokemon. So that looks like it should be in range of a close combat, and most likely would be able to take out the Venusaur.
Yeah.
And yeah, it looks like Fevzi knows it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I was trying to think of the ways he could get out of it. Maybe hope to get a Rock Slide miss somehow, and then the Togekiss stays asleep. Or no, it should be waking up, I think, at some point, and then go for Air Slash misses. But no. At that point, like you said, Jamie, Fevzi was able to try to bring it back, to be honest, because that Venusaur was high value at the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really could have done it. If that Arcanine hadn't got those speed boosts previously from the Airstreams, Earth Power would have KO'd the Arcanine first, and Torkoal would have been able to get a move off, which could have potentially knocked out the Togekiss, depending on what kind of coverage it has. You did see Body Press and Yawn as moves coming out from the Torkoal, but usually you would carry a fire move on that Torkoal. We didn't get to see what fire move that would have been, whether it was going to be that Eruption for huge damage when it's at full HP, or if it's Heat Wave, or that new move, Burning Jealousy, that we sometimes see as well to get those burns. Could have potentially knocked out the Togekiss, so it would have been the speed boost with the Arcanine was very significant.
I think it was very significant because it was able to deal that good amount of damage onto it. So let's just talk about a bit of the beginning of Game 3, right? The way that, unfortunately, that Gyarados was shut down. It was just so shut down from the cycling of the Intimidates even up until the burn of the Will-O-Wisp.
Yeah, I was saying the damage reduction, how significant that can be, and we saw that coming out from both sides with the screens in game 2 with the Grimmsnarl, and then the Arcanine with its Intimidates and Will-O-Wisp shutting down that Gyarados is meant that Fevzi could never properly make use of his Dynamax. The Gyarados was just really not threatening anything. It could have got some big damage into Toxtricity if it was able to catch that with the Max Quake, but the Arcanine being able to shuffle its Intimidates really reduced the damage from the Gyarados, just meant that Fevzi could never use his Dynamax.
Yeah, I think it's just like you said, the damage reduction was so huge. We had it from Grimmsnarl in the first 2 games. A bit, yeah, I mean, the second game really proved well to how Fevzi was able to control it a bit more in a situation, bring it back with Venusaur in the back, but he wasn't able to do that because the Gyarados just stayed on the field for so long. It was a useless slot that unfortunately Fevzi could not find a solid way on taking advantage of. He just wanted it to go down, but at the same time, he didn't want to risk a switch in because he needs, like he knew in that situation, he doesn't want damage to go onto the Pokemon in the back, even though the Sun turns were running out. So it was very, very tough given the board position that Alexandre was able to accomplish really well in his favor.
Yeah, it pinned Fevzi very well. The Gyarados, it needed to switch out to be of any use as it was just doing just no damage. But then, yeah, the Venusaur, if it does switch in, it's facing down an Arcanine that can fire off the Heat Waves and the Snarls to reduce its special attack. And Air Slashes could have come out from the Togekiss as well. So it just meant that Fevzi could never really get a hold in the game. And yeah, it was just put on too much pressure with those Airstreams, with those damage reductions, just really putting on.